Are we
All right.
ready to rumble?
Yes. So, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma from all over the world, we once again have the pleasure of having Luang Por Viradhammo here, zooming with us from Tisarena. Let us all now put our palms together and offer 3 bows to Luang Por. First bow, please. Second bow. And third bow.
Great to see all the familiar faces. Namaste, everyone. So, shall we meditate first?
Yes,
First things first.
Yes, and before we begin, Luang Por, some of us have a special request.
Right.
We know today is April Fool's Day here in
Is
Asia.
it? That's why I racked my head. I didn't know it was.
However, we also do remember that on the 24th of March, a dear beloved mother of yours passed away some years back. We wish to offer this teachings today in memory of your mother and to dedicate this practice to you, to your good health, and to your well-being.
Thank you. Well remembered. Thank you. And yeah, how about half an hour? Would that be a good idea? Yep. I'll just give a bit of instruction, not much. It seems like everyone here is experienced, almost enlightened, so we probably appreciate the silence more. So let's do that. Set the clock for half an hour. Okay. So please take a posture that's comfortable. You can sit still for a while. So how is it now for you? How is this moment? Without comment, without judgment, coming back to Luang Por's constant encouragement, it's like this. So this isn't an intellectual comment, it's just an experiential recognition. It's like this. Notice the silence. And notice that awareness is silent. So be that silent awareness. So in theory, that's sufficient instruction. Be that silent awareness. If your mind's very busy, then localize your attention on breathing, silently aware of an in-breath, silently aware of an out-breath. It's the silence and awareness that we are concerned with, training with. So silent awareness with an in-breath, silent awareness with an out-breath if you want. All right, so let's sit silently for a while.
Right. Brahma Jaloka Dipati Sahampati Anatan Janiyana Viwaran Jata Santi Sata Paraja Tajatika Desi Dhamma unconditioned.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassa. Volume is good, Peter? All right. First of all, news from Tisarana. Bit of news. Beta, can you give us those 3 photos? Yeah, you don't do this in Singapore, do you, Beta?
We don't make it.
So this was in, I don't know, February, and they were clearing the snow on one of the entranceways of the new building because the roof wasn't on yet. It just had building paper on. So I thought if you're in KL or Singapore, it looks a bit crazy, but that's what we do here. The roof is almost on. So another one. Beat the next one. That's not a great shot, but that's the inside of the hall. Coming along, it's very beautiful. We all love it in there already. And then there, that's the latest photo. And those of you who've been at the monastery, you can see on the right side is the Bhikkhu Vihara. And on the left, just over the edge of the building, you'll see the house. Move your arrow a bit, move it to the left, Beta, left. Oop, there, and now go up a bit, and go right there. That's the house. This is very cool. It's like video games. Anyway, you can see the house, so you get a kind of sense of the landscape. And the builders are putting on the plywood, and the roofer is here next week, probably. Yep. So there we go. So that's the project. But the real project is the mind. And that's, I don't know, I can't speak for the others, but it's going well for me. And some of you know I had an accident in Thailand, and I needed to, they had to reattach one of the tendons in the rotator cuff. And I can move my arm pretty good now. So that's great. And what else? And then during this winter retreat we just finished, all the bhikkhus were in Asia at different times. After my recuperation period in Thailand, I had the pleasure of going to India, to Chennai with Yom Vibon to join Venerable Amar Siri, his parents, Raji and Deepak, and my brother. And my brother is 2 years older than me. I've never really done any kind of travel with him because we went our own way. So this was the first time. And that was great fun. The Venerable Siri set up a beautiful tour, and we visited temples and ate lots of chapatis and the things one does in India. But in any case, it was a grand time. And then back here, and this privileged life of meditation and building work and relating to people in these ways. So what to talk about? A few days ago, I was at Bruyere Hospital visiting a friend who was in the last hours of her life. And I knew her quite well. She died about 18 hours later, next day, 11 o'clock about. I was there in the afternoon. And I was there with Nirasu. And the reality of someone dying is quite shocking visually and emotionally. It's such a strong experience. And just kind of seeing her struggle physically with the pain of the body and the breathing and all of that. And her two friends, it's like this is such an essential thing. Someone's dying. There's no more frills. There are no more distractions. And what's important in this moment. And on the one hand, there is the love that these two friends were love and care were offering the person that died. In a way they've been doing it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that deeply felt relationship to another human being as they're going through their traumatic difficulties of dying is obviously the only true response to the way we relate with each other when it's down to the last moments of life. I mean, it's just so obvious that the Brahma Viharas or love or care or compassion are the way that we can engage with each other. In death, it seems so very obvious. When we have lots of vitality, sometimes it doesn't seem obvious. So, things like resentment or worry can linger, etc., etc. But also, very importantly, was one of the friends, and they're all meditators, they're all friends of the monastery. The reflection that she offered, this lady who was dying, that whenever she got stressed and you could see she was agitated and she had a lot of pain, a lot of physical pain, the friend would say, trust and awareness. And I mean, that was so wise, I thought. So much wisdom and love. It was two simple things, really. Trust and awareness and love. And what else? What else are you going to do when that moment comes? You're not going to, you're not going to be able to think or whatever. And the response from the person that was dying was always very much relaxing into the way it is. Not that it was a relaxing situation, not that it was a easy situation, but just that reminder, trust and awareness. Now, all of these good folk had a practice of that for many, many years, came to the monastery, and they had a reference to that kind of language. Also, we did, of course, as we do, we did some chanting. I did some chanting, and then we as a group, because the ladies didn't know the Pali, I did some of the Pali chanting, but just before I left, we all did the Metta Sutta in English. And it was beautiful to watch her. Like her voice now had become unable to expel a lot of volume. So it was at a kind of whispering level. But as we were chanting, this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness, I could see her lips moving through that language. And she was trying to hold her hands in Anjali. And you could just see the wholesomeness of the mind states which were presenting themselves in the midst of a very, very difficult physical, emotional situation. And so these simple references that we have, trust and awareness, are really, really profound if we sustain them as a lifestyle, I would say, not just as a meditation that we do periodically, but as a whole lifestyle awakening to the way things are. That's really, obviously, that stayed with me strongly. This is so elemental, so perfect in some strange way, so appropriate in some strange way. And I really, in my heart, I applauded the skill of these three women, the skill that they were using in their own understanding of the situation and negotiating, because we don't know what to do. The mind is fraught with doubt and how should I handle this and what's the correct thing to do? And yet their intuitions and their love created the right kind of response, I thought. I was only there briefly. I was only there for half an hour and so on. And I had been with her for week upon week, but it felt very inspiring in a strange kind of way. Sad, yes. Shocking, yes. There's all of that, but also encouraging that in the midst of this most difficult situation for oneself and others, there is refuge. There is a response to this. There is a way of going through this. So just to change tack would be on the same tack. It's always been helpful for me to have, and I often talk about this, to have a large picture of this Theravada teaching within which I understand all its components. Naturally, this would be true of driving a car or baking bread. If you don't understand the components, then what's the brake for? What's the gas pedal for? What's the steering wheel for? So they're all part of whole. And in the same way, the Buddhist teaching is a whole teaching. It's not just fragments that we pick up and then use in some kind of unintegrated way. And so the way I formulated that integrated whole aspect of this teaching so that I could understand what Paticca Samuppada was about, what the three characteristics were about, why we emphasize anicca dukkha anatta, why the khandhas are dukkha, and so on and so forth, all those different varied teachings and all the lists. The way I made sense of that for myself was to go back to the allegory or fable that were given about Prince Siddhartha. And so as you've all seen and read, Prince Siddhartha, his dad learns that Prince Siddhartha might become an ascetic, might become a renunciant. Father's not pleased, so he builds a gilded cage for him. He lives in his gilded cage and doesn't see suffering. Of course, this is an allegory. I don't take it as gospel, as it were, but allegories are good. They simplify things. And it's almost childlike in simplicity. So then we have Siddhartha getting older and doubt arises in his mind, and he sneaks out of his gilded cage, goes off with his charioteer. One needs a charioteer. And off he goes, and he goes to the village, and he sees a sick person. So again, I can't, it seems very childlike, but actually its direction is very, very profound. So he sees the sick person and he asks Chana, "Boy, hey, what's that?" Chana says, "Well, that's a sick man. Everyone gets sick." And Siddhartha is shocked. So again, if you take it like as some kind of true story, then you kind of can dismiss it. But there is that in us which only notices sickness when it comes to us or comes to our families. We don't really notice it. So he goes back, and he's, as you know, he's a bit upset by that. So another day comes, he goes out again and sneaks out of the gilded cage, and China takes him to the village, and he sees an old person racked like with osteoporosis and macular degeneration and all those lovely things that can come in old age. And it's a shock to him again. And China says, "Well, that's an old person. We all go there if we don't die first." And again, Siddhartha's shock was back. Third time goes out, sees a dead person, a corpse. And I don't know, I've seen a fair number of people who have died in my life, and it's always a shock. It's a powerful, powerful, powerful vision, perception, seeing in consciousness. So he sees that. He's really, really shocked. Goes back, and a fourth time he goes out. And it's very important to remember the fourth time. It wasn't just old age, sickness, and death. Because sometimes We emphasize those. The fourth time he goes out and he sees an ascetic, a sadhu. I was just in India. There's lots of sadhus in India. It's just, we're at Tiruvannamalai. It was like sadhu, like wall-to-wall sadhus. If you ever been to Tiruvannamalai, Sri Ramana's ashram, it's great. It's like, I just felt at home there. Anyway, all these guys in orange robes and so. So there's a sadhu sitting under a tree, always sitting under a tree, and he sees that, and who's that? He's never seen a sadhu before. And Chani says, and here's the whole nub of this parable or this allegory is that he says, this man is sitting under the tree. What is he? He's a renunciant, and he's seeking the deathless. And that is an idea that existed and exists in India at that time and now, that there is a transcendent possibility in human consciousness. Enlightenment is a possibility, whatever way you want to define that. And we don't have that common in our culture. We have theistic ideas, we have that, but we live in a very secular time. So the ideas of transcendence aren't very, very powerful. We have strong ideas about psychology and cognitive therapies and indigenous things and so on. These might have that language in them, might not have that language in them. But I think this allegory, although it seems very childlike, it's pointing to something very, very profound, is that the Buddha then decides that renunciation is going to be his path. And his renunciation is, I am going to give up the gilded cage, the comfort, etc., and I'm going to try to realize the unconditioned or the deathless for the sake of all beings, out of compassion for all beings. Now that's the Theravada model that I find very, very inspiring, because his aspiration wasn't just like, I've got too many responsibilities, I'm going to dump the wife and kids and go off to a cave. It wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. It was this profound shock in his mind about the frailty of life. Although he wasn't sick or anything, he didn't have Lyme's disease or those kinds of problems. But he saw that this is unlimited. This is unlimited. And is there something that's unlimited, that's unconditioned, uncreated, unborn? This is the language that we have in Theravada Buddhism, which people find difficult. But so that's the reason he searches. That's the reason he gives up comfort. That's his motivating factor. And then through the years of austerities and some of the practices or whatever, finally he realizes that goal. There is the unconditioned, there is the uncreated, there is the unoriginated, there is the unborn. If there were not the unconditioned, the uncreated, the originated, the unborn, there would be no release from birth and death. So he realizes something. And that's the model we have in Theravada Buddhism. If we come from a psychological model or a theistic model, it's hard to maybe understand that. And then all the teaching from then onwards, it seems to me, has to address his realization. He has that realization, and then he teaches in order that we can have the same realization. So that's important for me, that the context of the Four Noble Truths, of dependent origination, of the Paramita teachings, and this kind of rich teaching that we do have in Theravada Buddhism is helping us to realize what he realized. That's the context for me, and I find that very helpful. So then, the simple statements around morality, about doing the maximum amount of good, minimal amount of harm. That's not transcendent, maybe. Most cultures would encourage that. That's a very good thing. But it's also the basis for a happy heart, a heart which is no longer embedded in remorse and regret. Not a guarantee. By no means is it a guarantee, but it is a foundation. And it's terribly important, because if that doesn't exist, the mind is at a level of confusion and remorse and regret and so on and so forth. So it makes sense, but it's not sufficient because it's not transcendent. But to dismiss like moral culture or responsible living in society, to say it's not important, would also not be right, because it is important, but it's not the only thing. So the teaching that we get then on the Four Noble Truths is interesting, because what it's doing, it's pointing to where you will not find the unconditioned, where you will not find transcendence, where you will not find liberation. And that's basically in all of experience, and all of experience through the senses. So when we feel discontent, when we feel disappointment, when we feel lost, these kind of negative aspects of our sense experience, what we obviously do is we try to find a compensation. Comfort, comfort food, something to move away from the discontent, which is okay, and biologically it's to some extent necessary. But that sets up in us this constant seeking and looking for the transcendent in that which is not transcendent. No experience is transcendent. If it begins, it ends. So we constantly emphasize change rather than the quality of the experience. Sure, the quality of the experience. I have a happy experience. I have an unpleasant experience. Those are important, not to dismiss them. We'll always, be sort of interested in happiness and wanting to get rid of unhappiness, but you can never find Buddha's realization of the unconditioned in a condition, in a memory, in an emotion, in the body, in social relationships, in craft, in profession, in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Whatever you want, you won't find it there. And that, to me, is the nub of, or the heart of renunciation. Not like rejecting sense experience, but realizing that sense experience is the realm of desire and the realm of pleasure and pain, and it is as it is, and we do the best we can in it. But it is not the place to discover the transcendent. And what is the place to discover transcendence? Well, it must be some possibility in human consciousness which is not dependent on cause and condition, which isn't in the usual realm of causality, and that is awareness. Awareness has no kind of flavor or taste or structure. You think about awareness now. What is the outer limit of awareness? Like stop your mind, stop thinking, and what's the outer limit of awareness? Is there an outer limit? My mind goes silent, but it's aware. Okay, then what's the center of awareness? Like, find a center. Like, really be quiet. You have to stop thinking. Where's this? What is the center of awareness? Is it a thing? I can't find it. I can't find a structure. I can't find limits. I can't find a center, but it's there. It's there. Is awareness hot or cold, or is it in between? It has no temperature. Is it green, blue, yellow? It has no color. Is it salty? Huh? Is it a Ferrari or a Volkswagen? Is it male? Is it female? Does it have a bald head or does it have hair? Right? I mean, we could play around with forever and you'd never find awareness as a condition. But awareness is there. You can't deny that. Presence is there. Consciousness is there. So what this beautiful teaching that Luang Por Viradhammo has been offering us, it's like this, is trusting that statement is actually the gateway to enlightenment, is the transcendent. if you trust in it. And it's not like trying to figure out anything. Like when I'm like right now, we're figuring out our year's duties and work and projects. That's the realm of figuring out. If I have a cut in my hand, I figure out how to fix that. Okay. But awakening to the way things are is not, you're not trying to figure anything out. And that's one of the difficulties of trusting in awareness. We always think we need to be doing something, figuring something out, analyzing, getting this state of mind, getting that state of mind, becoming this, becoming that, doing this and doing that. But what do you say to someone dying? Oh, just do second jhana. Try that to someone that's dying. You go third jhana. Go ahead. That's not going to work. Or like you can't do anything. Can't go forward. Can't go back. Except this is the way it is. It's like this now. And that's not a doing. That's a remembering. It's not like you have to change this moment to another kind of a moment. You do that if you're sick. You do that if the milk is burning on the pan. You do that if you have a flat tire. You do that all the time. Nothing wrong with that. But in this sense, trusting in awareness then is the gateway to the unconditioned. But trusting in it is difficult. And why is trusting in it difficult? Because of our attachment to desire. And when the conditions of our lives are very fraught, it's very hard just to be aware. So folk who have like PTSD symptoms from war or from trauma from childhood, or people who have huge losses like death, sudden death or sickness, all these things, they're very hard to be aware of. We seek some compensation, we seek some kind of distraction. And we do the best we can, we muddle through. There's much of life which is very ho-hum and mundane. It's not, it's not extreme, it's kind of very ho-hum. And then to use the unextreme parts of our life to trust in awareness. Take a simple example. Let's say you're meditating. Huh? You're meditating and your meditation as usual is not going well. And your mind is all over the shop and you're worried about this or thinking about that, and you have a pain in your knee and you think, why did I even start this meditation? Maybe I should watch BBC News or something. And so the mind starts, well, this is a long meditation. And that is a perception. This is a long meditation. I'm not getting anywhere. That's a thought, a perception, a sense of self. Now, if you identify that as an object, this is an object in awareness. This feeling of not getting anywhere in meditation is an object. It can be known, trust and awareness. That's not a big thing. It's a little thing. But much of life's practice are little things, little steps, little steps, little steps. And the way Luang Por Chah encouraged that in our contemplative life, most of you have probably seen Stillness Flowing. He had this very rigorous way of using the perception of uncertainty. You've all read that. And if like during the winter retreat, we read Luang Por Chah's biography. I think we're going through it for the 4th time now. We just go through it every winter retreat at breakfast. And I'm always struck with the rigor of his practice in terms of perception. So rigor means he's doing it all the time. He's encouraging it all the time. Perception is a way of interpreting or perceiving this moment. And what he uses is uncertainty. Now, it's not the same as saying life is changing. That's just a sort of Buddhist statement that we do, or a common statement. That's not really practice. That's just the way it is. But practice is introducing the perception of anicca constantly into all the stuff you're creating in your mind. I feel resentful towards someone, uncertain. I feel I'm not getting anywhere in my practice, uncertain. I feel that you're wrong, uncertain. I feel you're right, uncertain. I'm an old man. I get that one a lot, uncertain. I'm not getting younger. I know that. But just the very self-identity, I am an old man. Or I'm not an old man. You can say that too. I'm not an old man. Don't call me old man. Uncertain. And what does the perception of uncertainty do? Have you ever tried that? You have to try these things. They can't just be, oh, that's nice, Bhante, good for you. You have to do them. And Theravada's very much a doing. But what happens if you do that for 2 weeks? Well, first of all, you forget. You kind of remember in the morning, and by day 6, you're, oh, yeah, I was going to do that. So you have to remember. You have to remember, nothing very complicated, just a simple perception. Just a simple perception. And you try to introduce that perception in a sustained way. And this is what we mean by practice, seeing Buddha Dharma in all things, not just practice on the cushion, on the zafu, but sustained practice of awareness. Awareness with wisdom, and that we call sati sampajanya, as you all know. And sati sampajanya is different than just functional awareness. Functional awareness is, you be careful, don't stick your hand in the saw or your hand will be cut off. Make sure that you put enough salt in the stew. You put too much salt in, so that's functional awareness. That doesn't necessarily have wisdom in it. Wisdom is something, is this perception that this is uncertain. So it's a different realm. It's not the realm of concentration. Concentration is necessary. If I'm working or driving or whatever we're doing, we need to focus, we need to concentrate. So we're aware there. But the perception of uncertainty is what we call sati sampajanya, mindfulness and full comprehension. That full comprehension isn't some huge intellectual structure. It's a perception of Dharma. And it's true. It's true that like the biases I have, or the memories I have, or the perceptions that come and go in my mind are uncertain. They really are. They come and they go according to causes and conditions. So if I've like sometimes with the healing of the shoulder, I'd wake up, I'd have a lot of pain in the shoulder when I woke. Well, first of all, I wouldn't fall asleep for a long time. And then that created the conditions of grumpiness. Common condition. But grumpiness is a perception. It comes from a place, it comes from a place of physical discomfort and lack of sleep, but it's a perception in the mind. Oh God, it's never going to be well. I'm never going to be well. Grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. But that can be known. Oh, this is grumpiness feels this way. That doesn't sound like much, but it's the freedom from grumpiness. And not to say that you shouldn't be grumpy, or you should be always happy and life is great and I'll have metta for everyone all the time. I don't know. I can't do it. I just can't do that. I'm just human, right? So bad shoulder, bad night, no sleep, wake up. I'm glad no one can see me and I don't have to talk with anyone. Meditate, sit down, meditate. Grumpy feels like this. It's gone. It's gone. Wow, where did that go? Yet in the past, I mean, I've been at this game for a while, so, I'm not totally hopeless, but in the past, I could have done grumpy for 2 days. Wake up, oh, grumpy, grumpy, it's your fault, grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. And then I get a good night's sleep and maybe be more bright. But that's enslavement. That's enslavement to the, all these necessities, which I think I have. So you see, like these are very profound things. When I can awaken to a mood of the mind as a condition which is uncertain, not me, not mine, not worth hanging on to, not worth attaching to. So my mind becomes less and less drawn to conditions. As it becomes less and less drawn to conditions, because I know them, these are conditions, what becomes apparent is that awareness itself is brightness, is silence, is well-being. And it's there all the time. It's unconditioned. That is a difficult process with many of our mind states. Again, so there's the extremes of loss. and PTS syndromes and chronic anxieties. And these are very real things which we suffer from as human beings, or like heavy chemotherapies that we have to endure and all of the rest of it. So there are very difficult things. And how do we train for those difficulties that in the non-difficult times, we really pick up the practices of awareness? It's like this, and really are very, very rigorous with it. And where we get stuck very often, and Theravada talks a lot about this, where we get stuck is in Ditupadana, attachment to views. And you see that whether it's conspiracy theories, or it's views and opinions about vaccinations, or it's political theory, or it's jhana theory, or it's Mahayana, Hinayana, and all the whole 9 yards of human delusion, we get stuck with opinions. And notice how someone who's very opinionated, it's not just an opinion, it's a self. I am right. I know. You don't know. You haven't read. You haven't seen. You don't know. And that is death. You're now reborn as an opinionated person. Reborn as, and that's birth and death. There's no freedom because one is now attached to the khandha of opinions, to the khandha of thought. That doesn't mean we can't have opinions. We all have opinions, but in the end, maineh. And that is so refreshing. It is so freeing. So when you start to do that, like as a teacher, I mean, if someone asks me a question about something, I don't know, I do know, not sure, that's fine, nothing about it. But if I say teacher, I think I always know, I am trapped into being a teacher. And that's what people who hold opinions, Ditupadana, they get trapped and they're no longer free. Which doesn't mean that we can't argue or debate and say this is true for me, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's attachment. It's attachment and understanding attachment when you realize that, and when you take back and you go back to that allegory, you go back to the Buddha's, there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed. A perception, an opinion is formed. It's a condition culturally formed for various factors. Don't hold on to it. Don't hold on to it. You don't have to reject it, but just find freedom in not knowing. Maineh. And you find this throughout the literature in Buddhism, in Korea, in Chinese Buddhism, in Advaita Vedanta, you find this sense of humility. I don't know. It's like this. So you know, but you don't know. Like you feel unsure of yourself. Oh, this is what unsure feels like. It's fine. You know what you feel, but it's not an opinion. It's not a position. It's different. It's the freedom of awareness. So then you see how awareness contains all things. It contains your confidence. It contains your lack of confidence. It contains your judgment about people. It contains your forgiveness of people. It contains it all. So then you find that awareness goes back to the Buddha's reference of the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed. And attachment to desire and all of that takes you back into the conditioned, into birth and death, again and again and again. So I think that's sufficient, something to chew on. Vita, should we open for questions or what do you think?
Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Karana Se Sadhu Sadhu Anumodami. Thank you so much, Luang Por. Luang Por, do you have like 10-15 minutes for questions and answers?
Sure, I'd be happy if anyone has any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. So brothers and sisters, the floor is now open for Q&A. If you have a question for Luang Por, feel free to click on the raise hand button on your Zoom panel and we'll unmute you. Or if you'd like to type into the chat box, the message box, I could read it out for you. Thank you. Anyone for the first question?
Alex.
Yes. Alex, could you
Okay.
unmute now? Yep.
Hi.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for taking this time and speaking. So much value from, just hearing you talk. The first thing I just want to say is something about Bhikkhu Badana. I was just wondering if you could spell that out or something so I could look it up.
Say that again, please.
It was the part about people who have they're very attached to views.
Okay. Ditupadana, right. Let me look up some references. And then Vita, how would we share those? Would there be a way?
Yeah, if you can send me the link, I could broadcast
Okay.
via email and WhatsApp, and I'll put it up on the BDF social media platforms, Facebook,
Okay. So we can do that. But Alex, just in terms of views and opinions, and Ditthi Upadana. So Ditthi is view, and Upadana is attachment. And attachment, one way to think about it is when there's a real strong sense of me in it. So for instance, if I say that, I have an opinion about Buddhism, and I have some view about it, and you tell me I don't believe. Let's say, better example. I'm walking through Auckland. I'm having a nice walk before a morning session that I'm teaching, and a guy comes up to me and says to me, he's a Jehovah's Witness, and says to me, "You're stupid." It's a true story. You don't know what you're talking about. Buddhism's a load of rubbish. You should believe in Jesus. I said, "Ooh, that's an opinion." So now, obviously, I get, because he's kind of attacking me, not physically, I feel the shock. But because I'm practicing awareness, I can feel, oh, this is what being attacked by a creep feels like, or whatever I want. But I know this. I don't kind of say Buddhism is better than that. Because I don't have any ego investment in Buddhism. I have a existential love of it, sure. I don't feel like so I feel the shock. I'm there, and it ceases. Not a problem. Okay, that's kind of easy because it's very shocking. But let's say I have a difference of opinion on a political view or whatever, and then someone attacks me or has a different opinion. Well, attachment, like let's say I'm in a discussion with 5 people, and someone presents an opinion which is really contrary to my values. Now, if it's an immoral thing, if someone's advocating violence and hatred, I say I disagree with that. I don't have to hate them, but let's say it's not so strong. Let's say it's just my liberal mindset doesn't like maybe this person's right-wing mindset, something like that, which is more typical. Then the attachment to views would be my need to change his mind. Not only would I have my view, but my view is right. And I have to make sure that this character, his view, is then opposed, defeated, annihilated, and crushed. That's the extreme. Or I might just feel resentful of that and say, he can't think like that. That's wrong. But that's all something I'm creating because I have this viewpoint. Now, if I let go of the sense of I in that viewpoint, and I feel, well, no, I think I still like that viewpoint. I think it's right. It works for me, that's for sure. But I'm no longer suffering because of his viewpoint. If it came down to something which is about moral integrity in the monastery, maybe his viewpoint was into, he came here to shoot the rabbits. I said, I'm sorry, we don't shoot rabbits in the monastery, get out. I mean, I would do that. So I would have some moral authority for my view about not shooting rabbits, right? But that sense of self-identity, that's what we really mean by attachment. So when there is a strong sense of me and mine running through the mind, then that's attachment. Now, the view and opinion might be one of self-disparagement. You know, it might be just that you hate yourself, that you have this idea, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible person. And that would be a viewpoint too, and a perspective which had a lot of emotional impact on you. And holding that would create a strong sense of self. So to put into that, it's uncertain. Not me, not mine. Will give you a perspective of space. It would come up again because it's conditioned by childhood or whatever. It comes up again, not me, not mine. This is not who I am. And again and again. So the attachment part of use is where the self-thinking is very strong. The me and my thinking, driven by emotion, driven by culture. Look at like racism in a culture. If you get a whole culture that is anti-Semitic or whatever it is, and it just has that mindset, people can believe that's the truth. And then that view and opinion creates a strong sense of self and other, and so on and so forth. And when you start to address that strong sense of self, and you see it is just thought, it's just voices, and you say it's uncertain, you keep returning to the silence of awareness. And then views and opinions, you see, it's not worth it. It's too much noise, it's too much holding, it's too much suffering. And you have a much more sense, well, I don't know, it's okay. But you do know. You know stuff, you've done stuff, but it's no longer held in that way. So the real nub of it is this I making, my making, the language of self that is the symptom of attachment. Yeah. I'll send some quotes to Beta, and maybe follow up with a bit of reading.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm trying to visit the monastery soon, so hopefully I'll see you.
Where are you?
I'm in Kitchener, Ontario.
Oh, well, are you close?
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you.
All right.
Okay. And Jonathan?
Jonathan or Miri? Shall we have Miri first? Miri? Miri, can you unmute, please?
Hi, Mary.
Hello.
How are you? How's Australia?
Nice to see you. Yeah, Australia's it's cooling down now, so yeah. So my question, is about the difference between uncertainty, and when they talk about one of the 5 hindrances in Buddhism, which is skeptical doubt. So that can be a hindrance if you have kind of like doubt in the Buddhist teachings, but how do you reconcile that kind of antidote to skeptical doubt with saying it's uncertain? Because there's some things you don't want to be uncertain about.
Well, if you can see doubt as an object, when you don't know, if you can know it as an object, as an anicca dukkha anatta, then you're seeing it as Dhamma. If you can, and that takes you more to the third fetter, I would say. So when you can see doubt as an object, and then choose whatever you want to do with that doubt, then it seems to me you understand doubt. It's not that you don't have doubt. You understand doubt as a khandha. It arises, manifests for a while, and then ceases. Then you have the freedom to choose. If you don't have that, then you tend to always want confidence. And if you want confidence, you attach to that, then doubt will always plague you. So that's why you find people who are very, very opinionated often are very full of doubts. I've seen that with monks. I mean, they just come at you with their opinions, and then, well, this guy knows everything. Wow. And then later on, quivering in doubt. And then strong opinion. I mean, it's not common, but I've seen that pattern. And why is that? Well, that's because doubt is not seen as an object. The person is the subject. And to release the suffering of the doubt becomes the subject of confidence. I'm right, this is right, da, 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 and then the doubt. So there's no freedom in that way. So then in terms of certainty, there's skill, there's the realms of skill, there's the realms of experience, there's the realms of knowledge where you have a certain amount of certainty. So I know full well that if I'm working on a table saw, it's good to be careful. I know this for sure. and so on and so forth. But then if uncertainty is a problem, where is the problem? And then you have to focus on desire. Four Noble Truths, uncertainty is a khandha. It's a type of sankhara. It arises. What's the desire? What's the tanha around it? And if the uncertainty has a huge ahankara mimankara, I making, my making, then you know, it's symptomatic of a pattern of suffering. And then you have to bear witness to unfulfilled desire around uncertainty, right? So uncertainty is uncomfortable if you compare it to confidence. And so the desire for confidence creates the problem. But if you bear witness to the uncertainty and doubt, but don't create a self around it, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, then the power of that sankhara to oppress you falls away. So it's not about being confident all the time. That just doesn't make sense to me. It's just like, it's not human. And sometimes people read it that way. They think, I have complete confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Never any doubts. But that's not how the mind works. But I know that a doubt is anicca dukkha anatta. That's Dharma. I know for sure that. Okay? All right. Give my best to David. Okay. Next.
Thank you, Mary. Next, can we have Jonathan, please? Jonathan, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, Ajahn. My name's. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you good. Please go ahead.
Brilliant. I'm just calling from London, UK. It's late, but it's really great to be here. I got a couple of queries. Firstly, very briefly, what the name? Do you mind me asking the name Viradhammo? I tried to find out what it means online, but not successfully.
Vira is hero, and Dharma is truth. So we get these high-flying names when we ordain.
Okay.
And I was the last guy that thought he was the hero of truth. I actually thought I was pathetic. But the name is a name of aspiration rather than a name of ego. So one sort of works towards it for a lifetime.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, bro. And I guess about opinions. I work in the arts, so often, attending a festival that I set up I found the funding for a few years back, and there's often descriptions of what's good and what's bad, but I guess it's more is there anything in what in say right livelihood, in the judgment or assessment of art, other people's endeavors, etc. I mean, is there a skillful way to explain? Someone submitted me a script and I think it's terrible, and they're saying, "Oh wow, so and so film festival thinks it's a good script, etc., and but they so yeah, maybe I'm a bit jumbled, but so I guess there's that kind of view on I'll stop speaking there. So yeah,
well, you
Buddhism
have
and assessment of arts. Yes,
you have in Buddhism, you have right livelihood. And if your livelihood is to be to some extent an art critic and critique pieces that are coming into your festival, then that's your job. And you try to do it to your best ability without the intention to harm anyone. Someone will feel harmed, obviously, by your critique, but that's the game they're in. It's like you play football, one side's going to lose. It's just the game. And if that is your job description, then you have to fulfill that. You have to do that. That's just the nature of that livelihood. So the most important thing in that sense, was to be honor whatever standards your livelihood has. I don't know what those standards are, but you would have them of
Yes.
critiquing art and bringing art and all the rest of it. And you would honor those standards. And then you would try to make those judgments from those standards, rather than you don't like this guy or you don't like that gal because of whatever reason. So there's no animosity in it. There's no hatred. There's no jealousy, all those other things that can enter into critique of others. And you realize that it's a painful space to say to someone, it's not up to scratch. You can't, but any livelihood would have that. If we have a carpenter on site who doesn't know how to bang a nail in, he gets fired the next day. We don't have carpenters like that. So that's the nature of livelihood. Okay. But when we talk about attachment to views and opinions, then we're talking about finding the silence of the mind, finding the peace and silence of the mind, which you won't access the silence of the mind through the critiquing mind, because the thinking mind is not silent. Its nature is to differences and comparisons, but that's not what you're doing when you're meditating. You're not going to those comparative parts of intelligence. You're going to that which is beyond thought. In other words, the silence of awareness. So then probably your livelihood of critiquing things would begin to critique your own meditation, because that's the way your mind has been trained and conditioned to find and compare and say, this one's good and this one's not good. Last week's was better. This week's is not so good. And that would be your challenge, not to go there. To say, oh, doesn't matter what happened last week. Today it's like this, which would be very difficult. So let's say last week you had a good meditation, and this week you have a horrible meditation. Your tendency would be to compare time. Oh, that was a bad meditation, or this was a good meditation. But awareness is not about good and bad. Awareness just knows the feeling of good and the feeling of bad. And that would be hard territory to get into if your livelihood and your conditioning throughout the day is very much in intellectual analysis and so on. So then your challenge would be, how can I do this livelihood, which requires a lot of intellectual aesthetic analysis, but also find a space of silence in my mind, which is a challenge of any livelihood, I think. You have that in different ways. That makes sense?
Wow, that does make sense. You talked about standards, you talked about the livelihood, and you talked about this place beyond thinking and understanding. I also want to pick up the point about racism, but I know there's another question, so I'm happy to say that for another time or ask it.
I think we have time. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I just come back from the UK closing gala of the Hong Kong Film Festival, and there's a lot of films there about cultural identity, etc. And I guess somebody called Hong Kong in the UK asked them if they were Chinese, and they sort of bit their head off. I'm not Chinese, and I'm Hong Kong. Even though I'm a Hong Kong, well, my parents are from Hong Kong, I know I'm ethnically Chinese. My DNA comes on that, whatever. And in addition, a lot of the art I create is from an East Asian perspective, etc. But doesn't Buddhism teach about anatta, as in no self? And is it unskillful to hold on so strongly to a sense of either cultural identity or nationality or ethnic identity? So
it's very unskillful. It's painfully unskillful. I mean, we have these cultural identities, and we are conditioned through the kind of cultural perceptions we have, but they're not freedom. And so, like I don't know if I react, like someone will say to me, "You're an American." No, I'm not. I'm Canadian.
Canadian.
I might have that kind of knee-jerk reaction because of a bias. Some of my best friends are Americans, or whatever, right? or whatever. So that's what you want to look at, those kind of knee-jerk reactions. Or like I tell this story a lot. People have heard this, but I went to I needed some sewing needles for our Juki sewing machine. So I went to a shop in Ottawa that sold sewing machines, and the lady at the counter had a hijab on, and she was really funny. And I was surprised that she was funny. I thought, wow, why am I surprised that she's funny? Because she has a hijab. So I could see I had this kind of cultural conditioning through media, through all of that I wasn't even aware of. And I thought, wow, you're really funny. And I, well, why not? Why shouldn't she be funny? So these are just, this is the conditioned mind is that way. It's not perfect. And we keep coming across these things. Look at that. But if we're aware, we won't self-identify. So I don't self-identify. Oh, I'm a terrible monk. I had this kind of cultural perception. And I'm not racist, but these kind of perceptions can come and go. But that's just the way culture conditions us. If we're aware of it, we don't attach to it, we don't suffer. And then we relate to each other as human beings that all want love, that all suffer, we all die, etc., etc. And we keep coming to that way of relating, even if we see we have gender biases or racial biases. We watch them come up and say, wow, look at that. And we recognize them. In there recognizing them, we're like letting them go. We're not trying to be perfect, because that idealism of perfection. That's a space that can cause you a lot of self-hatred. We're just imperfect human beings, cultural conditioning, all the rest of it, but we're trying to act in ways which are compassionate, kind, and generous beyond these kind of cultural limitations and definitions. Yeah?
Yeah, I can see that there's a one on the one hand is about beyond these definitions. On the other hand, what about, you know, organizations that say fight against racism, against sexism, etc., etc. I've just applied for a job to help advocate for East Asian artists in the UK that are just not very well funded, etc. But I'm thinking, oh no, am I sinking myself into a world of identity politics and advocating for social justice? Can it feed my ego? Can it be so I guess there's about social justice, race, and ego. It's such a tricky thing to be skillful around, Luang Por. That's my
the
final
most important thing is good friendships.
Right.
To work for the betterment of society is a very, very good thing in whatever way we do that. But if you have friendships which are biased and bitter and angry, those relationships will then pollute your consciousness. So good friendships is very, very important, that you do the work of compassion and caring, but that you don't get caught in all the rest of it. The hatred. I remember, like I went to a group of Greenpeace folk in New Zealand when I was living in New Zealand, and there was green, but there wasn't much peace. They were the angriest people I'd ever seen. They were really angry. And okay, they were doing what they were doing, but so good friendships is very important. Friendships which say, yeah, let's work for the well-being of South Asian culture, but let's not get just identified with the hatreds and the biases that might exist around those issues. Good friendships are so important in that way.
But had a term for good friendship, didn't he? But I can't remember what it is.
Well, that Kalyana Mitta is the most important thing in the spiritual life.
Okay.
And you think about it, you know, if you're hanging out with friends who are forgiving, who are cosmopolitan, who have a sense of humor about their own Hong Kongness or whatever it is, you know, they're going to be good friends to hang out with. But if they're dead serious Hong Kongers, you know, they're going to be boring to hang out with, even though their issues might be very, very good, very, very strong. So like I like to joke around about my Latvianness. My parents are from Latvia.
All right.
You know, but I'm not strongly identified with borscht. But I like it.
Very
Things
nice.
like that. So yeah, freedom, when you really understand the silence of the mind, then you can give a lot because you're giving us from compassion. if your giving is from resentment and so on, it burns you out, doesn't it? So giving is important. Yeah. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Jonathan.
you.
Nice to connect.
Listen.
Good luck in your fair, art fair. Okay. Mike?
Well,
No.
I think we can give you permission to take rest, Luang Por.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Shall we close, Luang Por, with the Buddha's words on loving kindness, Luang Por?
Yes, that would be nice in English.
Okay, thank you.
You can get it up. Please join in. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even with her life, her child, her only child. So should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. All right, everyone. Nice to be with you. See you next time. Namaste.
Everyone, let's put our palms together and offer 3 bows to Luang Por by chanting Araham. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava
Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadin.
Swakato Bhagavatam Dhammam Supadipano Bhagavato Namah.
Okay.
Be well, Luang Por.
See you next time, Bita. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you, everyone. Ciao. Don't worry, be happy.